Hey, it's Jen, and welcome to the With Jen podcast. Whether you're new here or a regular, I feel like you really got to hear this today. Sometimes podcast ideas arrive weeks in advance, nicely planned out, proper outline, cute little structure, maybe even a Google Doc if we're feeling particularly mentally stable. And sometimes an episode arrives literally an hour before recording because your nervous system, it suddenly just goes, hey, we should probably talk about this. So here I am, scrapping another episode idea and running to the mic with my own current life lesson because honestly, there's no better time than now. And I think this episode became that for me because if I'm honest, I've been abandoning myself a little lately in multiple ways at once, actually. And I have a feeling some of you have been too. I took a job that I knew pretty quickly wasn't right for me. But instead of listening to that feeling immediately, I started doing what a lot of emotionally aware, intelligent people do. I negotiated against myself. Well, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I should just push through. Maybe this is just adulthood. Maybe stability matters more than alignment. And before you know it, you're halfway inside a life your body already rejected 3 exits ago. And dating lately? Oh my God. Honestly, fascinating social experiment because nothing exposes your attachment patterns faster than genuinely liking someone. Suddenly you're healed, grounded, reflective, emotionally mature. And then somebody takes 6 hours to text back, and your nervous system starts opening 17 tabs at once. And what's been interesting for me lately is realizing that self abandonment usually doesn't start dramatically. It's subtle. It's staying one conversation too long, explaining yourself one extra time, making yourself smaller so something can continue, trying to become understandable enough to finally feel safe. A lot of us think self abandonment means completely losing yourself inside obviously toxic situations, but psychologically, it often starts much earlier than that. It starts when your nervous system quietly learns connection feels safer than authenticity, especially if you grew up being praised for being smart, helpful, emotionally mature, productive, adaptable, all of those joyful little things. Remember? Because then you become incredible at reading rooms, amazing at understanding other people, and fantastic at adjusting, but not always very good at hearing yourself anymore. And the annoying part is, people who self abandon are often deeply self aware. That's a trap. You can intellectualize your own discomfort for years. You explain your sadness beautifully while still actively participating in the thing hurting you. And I think that's where I've been lately. Not destroyed, not fully disconnected, just negotiating against myself in tiny, tiny ways. And maybe you are too. Maybe your exhaustion already knows. Maybe your resentment knows. Maybe your anxiety knows. Maybe the version of you that suddenly feels emotionally loud, numb, irritated, or overwhelmed all the time knows. Because eventually, your nervous system starts collecting evidence and it goes, hey, we keep leaving ourselves in rooms we don't actually want to be in. There's this version of healing online that sounds very clean. Like, once you do the work, you'll never people please again. Never overextend again. Never ignore your own needs again. But honestly, most people abandon themselves in multiple times and ways before they learn what safety actually feels like. In relationships, in business, in ambition, in trying to be chosen, in trying to keep the peace, in trying to become someone easier to love. And sometimes the worst heartbreak in your life won't come from other people leaving you. It'll come from realizing how many times you left yourself just to keep something alive. So, if you've done this lately, share the pod right now. Or if you feel like someone's been doing it, send them the link and let's dive right in. And like I said before, Self-abandonment usually doesn't start dramatically. Most of the time, it doesn't look like some huge movie moment where you completely lose yourself overnight. It looks small, reasonable even. Like saying yes while your body quietly says no. Becoming hyper logical because conflict feels unsafe. Over explaining yourself so nobody can misunderstand you. Staying understanding long after something stopped feeling good. Building your whole identity around being useful, needed, or easy to love. And psychologically, this actually makes a lot of sense. Your nervous system is built to protect connection because for humans, connection historically meant survival. So, a lot of people unconsciously learn to prioritize attachment over authenticity without even realizing they're doing it. Especially if you grew up being praised for being mature, adaptable, smart, emotionally intelligent, productive, all the things that I've named before. You'll learn how to read rooms, how to anticipate people, how to regulate other people's emotions, how to become who the environment needs you to be, but not always how to hear yourself. And that's where self abandonment gets sneaky because it can look incredibly functional from the outside while you slowly disconnect from yourself on the inside. And coping mechanisms play a huge role in this too. Because when people hear the word coping, they often immediately think about obvious destructive behavior. But coping can also look incredibly socially acceptable. Mine, for example, is humor. I'll laugh away all the things while something is genuinely hurting me. I'll make something into a joke before I let myself fully feel it. And honestly, I see a lot of people around me doing the exact same thing. The funny one, the bubbly one, the emotionally intelligent one, the one who always knows how to lighten the mood, and the stable one. And psychologically, humor actually can regulate the nervous system in healthy ways because laughter creates relief and connection and emotional release. So, humor itself isn't bad at all, like a lot of the coping mechanisms. But sometimes humor also becomes emotional camouflage, like a way to stay loved and a way to avoid worrying people, a way to keep functioning, a way to prevent yourself from fully collapsing in front of others. And I think a lot of emotionally aware people become incredibly good at performing okay while quietly drowning underneath it. I actually lost a friend to that a couple of years ago. He took his own life after years of being perceived as the smart one, the stable one, and the bubbly one. And what stayed with me during that whole situation was something he once said that he felt like he was the one adapting all the time. Like he always had to perform a version of himself that made other people comfortable. Like he was exhausted from constantly carrying the emotional tone in rooms. And rest in peace, Kay. I still miss you dearly. And I think moments like that force you to understand something really important. Just because somebody is functional or funny, intelligent, or high performing does not automatically mean they feel emotionally safe inside themselves. A lot of people are surviving through adaptation, and adaptation can look very rewarded in society. The employee who never complains, the friend who's always available, the partner who's endlessly patient, the entrepreneur who keeps producing, all the people who are oh so strong. Meanwhile, their nervous system is screaming underneath all of it. And eventually, your body starts collecting evidence. You get exhausted and anxious and irritable and numb, and you get all this sudden emotional overwhelm and weird resentment that you can't fully explain, especially that last one. Listen to that. Because at some point, your body goes, hey, we keep abandoning ourselves to maintain connection, stability, or approval. What the heck? And honestly, that realization can be heartbreaking because some of the worst grief in life comes from realizing how many times you left yourself just to keep something or someone alive. Okay, before this turns into the world's most emotionally devastating podcast episode, let's get into a little psychology for a second. Because I actually think understanding the nervous system side of this helps remove a lot of shame. And I want that for you all because I want you to do better. I want you to understand yourselves better. And I want you to be able to work on this without feeling too ashamed. Because a lot of self-abandonment behaviors are not character flaws. They're protecting mechanisms, coping mechanisms. And for example, let's take the fawn response. Most people know fight, flight, or freeze by now. But fawn is the one where you try to stay safe through adaptation. A lot of women do this, by the way. Keep an eye on it. You'll start seeing it. You'll be keeping the peace, over-explaining, becoming extra agreeable, reading everyone else emotionally before you even check in with yourself. Okay, that's a nerve. And the annoying thing is, fawning is often heavily rewarded socially. Just like I said before in a previous segment, it's kind of alike. Because people, they call you easygoing and emotionally intelligent and mature and kind and selfless and all these things. Meanwhile, your nervous system is basically going, if everybody around me is okay, then maybe I'm safe too. Maybe. And that can slowly turn into hypervigilance, which sounds dramatic, but honestly, a lot of hypervigilance just looks like constantly scanning. And here's a whole list for you. Scanning tone changes, energy shifts, response times, facial expressions, the vibe in a room, wording in a text, whether somebody suddenly feels off, and a million other ones. Your nervous system becomes obsessed with predicting emotional danger before it arrives. And if you do that long enough, something really, really weird starts happening. You slowly lose access to your own wants and needs because you become so focused on how do they respond and what's the safest response and how do I avoid conflict and how do I make this okay? When eventually somebody asks you, what do you want? And your brain goes completely blank. Not because you're weak, not because you're incapable, but because chronic self-monitoring disconnects you from yourself over time. And honestly, that level of self-monitoring is exhausting. Emotional burnout isn't always caused by doing too much physically. Sometimes it comes from constantly managing yourself psychologically, monitoring your tone, your emotions, your reactions, your expressions, your needs, your impact on others, whether you're too much, not enough, too emotional, too distant, too needy, too intense. Hot damn! It's like running 20 tabs in your brain all the time while still trying to function like a normal adult. No wonder people are tired. And I think that's why self-abandonment can feel so confusing over time. Because from the outside, it can look like you're doing everything right because you're functioning and you're productive and you're caring and you're adaptable. Meanwhile, internally, your nervous system is holding itself hostage, trying to maintain connection and safety and approval. And eventually your body starts protesting. Not because it's trying to punish you, but because it's trying to bring you back to yourself. Okay, deep breath for a second because I know we just collectively entered the emotional trenches together. And don't worry, solutions are coming. We're not ending this episode in psychological doomland. But before we get there, I do want to talk about a type of grief that people don't discuss enough because self-abandonment often comes with grief too. Not just grief over people, but grief over versions of yourself. The version of you that was trying so hard. The version that kept hoping. The version that thought, maybe if I hold on a little longer, just a little longer, this will finally work. And sometimes you're not even grieving the actual relationship or job or situation itself. You're grieving the future that you built in your head around it. And that's okay. We all do that. I do that all the time. You're grieving an apartment or routines or safety, a version of yourself that you thought you were becoming, or a life that you imagined living. And honestly, that can hurt like hell because eventually you realize somewhere along the line you started tolerating things not because they felt good, but because you desperately wanted a dream attached to them to survive. And that realization is painful, but also incredibly clarifying. Because once you see it, you can finally start asking, okay, what actually feels true or good for me right now? Okay, so how do you actually return to yourself after realizing you've been abandoning yourself a little? Because awareness is beautiful and important and psychologically fascinating and all that jazz, but eventually you still have to live your actual life. And I think one thing that helped me recently is realizing that returning to yourself is usually not one huge dramatic decision. It's tiny acts of self trust repeated consistently. And I'm actually going to keep this part very personal for you because sometimes when people talk about healing, they stay very vague and inspirational. And if you currently have zero inspiration or don't know where to begin, you're absolutely allowed to borrow some of mine for now. For example, one thing I've been doing lately is walking without immediately distracting myself. No podcast, no voice note, no productive content or music or whatever, just walking. And at first, oh, that was horrible. It felt terrible because the second silence appears, your nervous system often starts throwing thoughts at you like a malfunctioning confetti cannon. Okay, it's a hot mess. But psychologically, slowing down internal input actually helps you reconnect to internal signals again. And it doesn't have to be for too long. A lot of self abandonment happens because we override ourselves too quickly. So, creating even 10 quiet minutes a day where you can hear your own thoughts again genuinely matters. Another thing, journaling honestly instead of intelligently. And yeah, there is a difference. Because if you're emotionally aware, you can accidentally turn journaling into a TED talk about your own suffering, basically. And I've done that too. Sometimes I still do, and I'm like, shit, gee, you did it again. Perfect analysis, beautiful insight, still emotionally bypassing the actual feeling underneath it. Great. So lately, I've been trying to write simpler, less, why am I like this? And super deep stuff, but more, what actually hurt me today? What made me feel safe? What drained me? What did my body try to tell me this week? That's self trust too. And another one, letting disappointment exist without immediately negotiating against myself. Meaning, if something hurts me, I try not to instantly explain the other person into innocence anymore. Not because people are evil, not because nuance doesn't matter, but because over explaining can sometimes become a way to abandon your own emotional reality. And psychologically, this is important. Your feelings are data. Not always objective truth, but data. So instead of immediately going, well, maybe I'm overreacting, I've been trying to ask, okay, but why did this land so hard in my nervous system? That question changed a lot for me. And honestly, I think one of the hardest parts of healing is learning that love and situations often feel quieter than chaotic love or work or other things. Less convincing, less addictive. They're, less emotionally explosive. Because if your nervous system got used to unpredictability, intensity can feel more romantic than consistency. And that realization is deeply annoying, by the way. Like, wow, you're telling me that peace is healthy wherever I go, also with my manager? Rude. But I've noticed that love without self abandonment often feels softer. You don't have to monitor every text, you don't have to perform constantly. You don't have to shrink yourself to maintain connection. You don't have to explain yourself into humanity and into acceptability all the time. And maybe most importantly, you do not need to become hard in order to stop disappearing. I really want people to hear that part, okay? Because a lot of healing content online accidentally turns people emotionally cold. Like the goal is to never care again, never feel deeply again, or never need anyone again. But I don't think the answer to self-abandonment is becoming emotionally unavailable or to protect your peace at all times, because that it simply doesn't exist at all times. Sometimes there will be drama and weird shit. I think it's, becoming emotionally honest. There's a difference. You're still allowed to love deeply and to care and to hope, and you're still allowed to be soft. The goal is simply not leaving yourself while you do it. And honestly, I am still learning that too. Some days I catch myself faster, some days I don't. Some days I still over-explain, some days I still laugh things away, some days I still negotiate the living shit out of myself. But I think healing is maybe less about becoming some perfectly evolved person and more about returning to yourself a little sooner each time. And maybe that's the real thing I want you to take from this episode. You're not weak because you abandoned yourself. A lot of people learn survival before they learn safety. A lot of people became emotionally intelligent before they ever felt emotionally protected. A lot of people became who the world needed them to be before they ever figured out who they actually were underneath it all. The important part is this: you came back. Or maybe you're currently in a process of coming back, slowly and messily, with a nervous system that still panics sometimes, with patterns you still catch yourself in, with grief and with softness and with hope. But you're here. And honestly, that matters more than perfection ever will. So, if this episode resonated with you, feel free to share it with somebody who maybe also needed this reminder today. Or put it on your story and tag me, because genuinely hearing your thoughts always means a lot to me, especially with episodes like this that are a little more emotionally raw than planned. And also, if these kinds of conversations are your thing, the psychology, the ambition, the nervous system stuff, the existential, what the hell are humans even doing energy, then you're probably really going to love what's coming with the Great Minds Project too. Because one thing I'm realizing more and more is that a lot of intelligent, emotionally deep people are walking around feeling secretly exhausted, disconnected, or misunderstood while functioning incredibly well on the outside. We do that. You do that too. And I really want to create more spaces where we can talk about that honestly, without all the pretending and performing, and without turning healing into another productivity contest. Because you see that so much right now, as if it's not a contest. This is about mental health, you guys. But for now, drink some water, text somebody that you love, go touch grass, and stop over explaining yourself for at least 12 minutes. And I'll talk to you in the next episode. Take care, because I really care about you, okay? Biggest of hugs.